After making 2 epic Civil War pictures, I found I was still interested in the subject. A deeper challenge remained. I had explored the intimate bonds of friendship in both Gettysburg and Gods and Generals. One need only think of the anguish expressed by both Armistead and Hancock, or the devotion of Jackson's aides. I wanted to explore a different intimacy in Copperhead. My previous pictures focused on officers and leaders, but as David just said, in reality the war was fought by teenage boys, most from small towns whose families ended up devastated by the war, even if no battles were fought nearby. In Copperhead, the fractured relationships are between fathers and sons, the discovered friendships between young brothers and young neighbors. In the previous movies, I'd contrasted 2 dominant viewpoints, charging at each other with bayonets. In the South, you had the secessionists, who were willing to die for the rights of American states to break away from the Union, while to the North, you had the Unionists, and of course in this part of the world you had both, who were just as bravely committed to defending a united states. In 1862, the year in which the movie Copperhead is set, the abolition of slavery became an additional Union war aim. What has remained unsaid, at least in the popular culture, is that within each society, North and South, there were many, many factions, something you all in this part of the world are perhaps more familiar with. You had Southerners with no interest in owning slaves, nor for that matter any interest in seceding from the Union. To the North, you had differences of opinion that were just as fractious, even violent. Not everybody who hated slavery or loved the Union was willing to send their children off to die or be maimed in a bloody battle against fellow Americans. That fascinating reality is the dramatic force driving Copperhead. The screenplay was adapted from Harold Frederick's late 19th century novel by Bill Kaufman, who was himself a heretical political thinker and prolific author, whose nonfiction books have been praised for their rigor and honesty. Both of us were aware of Frederick's novel. Kaufman, as a native of upstate New York region where the novel is set, had long been aware of the works of Frederick, who had witnessed firsthand the Civil War era events that he later transposed into his novel. Bill and I sparked at the intimate scale of a story set in a small town hundreds of miles from the war and centered on a man who is a sympathetic human being even as he stands against what we now know to be the tide of history. If anything, we felt Abner Beach to be all the more sympathetic to audiences precisely because he must fight for his beliefs without knowing how things will turn out. There are huge consequential choices for us at every turn in history. We have to choose without the benefit of 20/20 hindsight. You have a guy saying no when everybody around him is saying yes. His stand is thoughtful and principled, yet to his colleagues, his neighbors, eventually his family, he is viewed as a pariah, even a traitor. We observed as well that too often dissent is dramatized in films by centering on the one person in a hostile society whom history has later proved to be right. Everyone says they're in favor of dissent, but you're flattering an audience and falsifying history if you stack the deck so that all the right-thinking people of today already agree with the dissenter. If she or he is alone in defending Darwin's theory of evolution, say, or standing up to the mob that wants to hang the witches at Salem. It's much harder, more truthful, and introduces more interesting complications if your protagonist is like Abner and opposes the very thing we now know that history has ratified, the war to uphold the United States and to end slavery. It raises the moral question not of slavery, but of free speech. Okay, you lovers of dissent, are you going to defend this guy? We stayed close to the structure of Frederick's novel, its cast of characters and rich sense of spoken language. That line where an ear of burnt corn is described as tougher than Pharaoh's heart is so good you'd be crazy to cut it. The book is filled with them, illuminating a time and a place and a mindset that's been positively informed by the memorization of Scripture. Of course, you live or die by who you cast. For Abner, we needed an actor who could, at a glance, make you feel the man's warmth, his groundedness, his gravity, his honesty. Billy Campbell has all those qualities. I'd worked with him well in both Gettysburg and Gods and Generals, and thought of him right away for Abner. I'd also been long aware of Angus McFadden because of his terrific work in Braveheart and elsewhere. He was ideal for G. There's a tornado in Angus. He's such an inventive actor, so alive to what's happening at any moment. He takes G into the historic but larger-than-life rage of a John Brown, wherein a person becomes capable of deadly violence for their ideals. Another key piece of casting was Peter Fonda as Abner's neighbor Avery. This role is built up beyond the simpler character sketch provided in the novel for two reasons. There was a need to articulate Abraham Lincoln's point of view in a way that was organic to small-town life of the time, but we didn't want to fall into the trap Gore Vidal warns us about of imposing a character who was an alter ego for 21st century thought. Avery provided us an opportunity to keep the argument local and true. Casting Peter Fonda also enriches the film in terms of his particular screen presence. You're free to think of his dad playing young Mr. Lincoln in John Ford's classic, or Peter himself as the man in search of America in Easy Rider. There's a key exchange in the film that comes when Avery, taking Lincoln's position, directly challenges Abner's anti-war stance. He asks, "Doesn't the Union mean anything to you?" What Abner says in reply grows out of a deep bond between all the characters that we tried so vividly to create in this long ago time that could just as easily be this morning. "My family means more to me," Abner tells his loyal opponent. "My farm means more. Even though we disagree, Avery, ye mean more to me than the Union." In both Gettysburg and Gods and Generals, there is an inquiry into why good, ethical, honorable men chose to go to war, whether they wore blue or gray. In Copperhead, we explore its mirror opposite. Why do good, ethical, honorable men choose not to go to war? And what indeed is the price of their dissent?